And welcome back, and continuing our conversation with equal education after yesterday's court ruling in the Bishu High Court. And it's a very interesting one. As I said earlier, I would, really ask you, if you can, go and read it, because it's not just about education, it's about your constitutional rights throughout. And perhaps to illustrate that, Tracy, the judge said there that, when it comes to education, the minister does not only have a responsibility to provide education in the narrow sense of providing books and classrooms and what happens within that confine, but everything else that would bring about, the dignity and all the other aspects and facets of education also are her responsibility.
Yeah, I think one of the I believe one of the significant things that the judge said yesterday on the court ruling, she said that it is unconstitutional and also invalid for the government, not only the Department of Basic Education, but for the government to delay fixing poor and unsafe school infrastructure. And this goes back also to protecting learners' rights, their dignity, and also equality, and also making sure that they learn and also teachers teach under safe conditions. But
that also raises another issue, because very often it is evident that people do not know what their rights are. People do not even know what their children's rights are when it comes to the constitutional provision of the right to education, quality education. Yeah. People don't understand. But what does that mean?
It means that we need to educate each other. We have a role to play as South Africans, and also as people who understand the law and also the Constitution. Because one of the things that we'll be doing as equal education moving forward, we'll go back to those schools that have been applying for their schools to be fixed, and we'll be educating them about what does yesterday's ruling mean to them, and how do they go about making sure that their schools are fixed, and also making sure that the minister doesn't miss the deadlines. Because if you can recall when the norms and standards were published, one of the things that one of the first deadlines was that all the schools that are made up of entirely of asbestos, wood, mud, and zinc should be eradicated, and all the schools without water, sanitation, and electricity should be prioritized. But on the 29th of November in 2016, there was nothing. That deadline came and went, and there was nothing much that we can do. And that is why we say that for the next 2 years, we're going to make sure that we try to fix those loopholes, and we make sure that all the schools are aware, and they do make sure that the government does provide proper infrastructure to make learning. Yeah.
And, of course, the issue of budget, because that is often the reason or the excuse, however you want to view it, that is put forward, that we simply do not have the money, the budget, in order to do what needs to be done.
We've seen when we were talking about, corruption 2 years ago, we've seen that a lot of money is being lost it's being used in other things that we don't necessarily need. And we also saw that there's a lot of money, especially in provinces like Limpopo and the Eastern Cape, that goes back to the treasury. So it means that there is money, but there's no proper management of that money. So I think one of the things that the government needs to do, they need to start using that money. Then we can then say there's no money or we don't have budget to fix certain things. But if there's money that is still going back to the department, then it means that there's lack of management, not resources.
And I'm sure there are schools with inadequate infrastructure across the country, but as it pertains to the Eastern Cape, that has always been a dire situation. And how would you characterize it today?
I was listening to one of the interviews that Equal Education did years ago, where one of the bishops speaks about learning conditions within the Eastern Cape in the 80s. But when you look at the learning conditions today, he was saying that they are now worse. So in the Eastern Cape, when it comes to infrastructure, schools, when it comes to hospital, when it comes to all the government infrastructure, we have a real crisis. And I think it's now time that the government does, all the government departments, especially the Minister of Basic Education, does, monitor the progress in those provinces and also make sure that the money or the budget that is there is being used for whatever that is supposed to be used for. Because we cannot allow, a situation where we are in 2018, 24 years after democracy, but there are still young people who suffocate in pit latrines and die. We cannot allow that. So I think it's time that our government, take charge and make sure that they do whatever that they're expected to do. And we also, as civil organizations, we hold them to account.
Well, Tracy, thanks so much for coming through. And of course, Equal Education giving us their reaction. Tracy Malawana is the Deputy General Secretary of Equal Education. And a judgment yesterday handed down in the Bisho High Court in favor of equal education. And one would say in favor of just the general population of South Africa, that poorer schools will now have to be brought up to speed with some of the more affluent schools in our country. And as I said, we will, as soon as the minister and the department have studied the judgment, get them in to get their reaction to this as well. And we're going to go to